Okay, all right. Da-da-da-da. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Biohacking Bestie. In today's episode, we are hosting Jacob Riglin.
Most prolific biohacker
I
you've ever seen.
was a reluctant biohacker. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. I know how much you did not want to do it, and I think I've asked you to have this interview for the last 3 or 4 months, and you kept saying no.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah. Why you didn't want to do it? Why did you not want to talk about us breaking up?
I think
Because
I
I think your
shared.
reasons are valid. So
No, I think I shared my side on Instagram to give people and my following an insight into what had happened, but I didn't feel it was necessary to like just bare all to everyone and kind of make it more of a thing than it already was.
yeah,
Just didn't feel necessary to me.
yeah. I'm torn between. There's a part of me that obviously wants to like. There are two kinds of people that are watching this. Some of them are just curious and looking for some gossip, and they kind of feel like, oh my god, it didn't work out for them. I knew it. I want to find out. Like I'm super nosy. I want to find out what happened. Fuck those people.
Feel that.
But this podcast is for people that are in the weeds, doing the work, being in relationships, sometimes failing, sometimes not. And they want to hear other people's stories and their vulnerable shares of what it's like to be in a relationship. And sometimes it doesn't go the way we would like to. And I know that whenever others share vulnerably about what they're going through has given me the courage and permission um, just to do the same. And I think these are the people who I want to speak to today. You know,
I mean, I
those.
totally understand the perspective of, you spend years sharing the highlights, so then why go quiet when things are bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to have the confidence to share. And I think from my perspective, of course, in the moments that we decided, okay, cool, this is not working. We've tried different things. We need to ultimately make that decision to break up. I needed to spend time, with myself and focus
Yeah.
on me, and that wasn't a time or the place for me to then sit and share that I didn't feel it was right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think even just the words you use, remember how we worked with an incredible spiritual coach and she called us out on using the words didn't work out, break up, etc., etc. Right? So let's just debunk this whole idea that relationship is only good if it lasts long. Because for me, a merit of a good relationship is how much it has helped you heal. And hi, sir. And you've been my dream come true. And no one has sparked more healing
mm,
in my life than you did. And so, if healing is a merit of a good relationship, then this was the best relationship of my life. You know, the amount of healing, the amount of triggers, the amount of um, you're a massive mirror to me. And so it was the best that ever happened to me. Right. And I fell in love with your adventurous spirit and your kindness and this sense of like anything. Yeah, that like I fell in love with your attitude of like fuck, anything is possible. We can make any dream come true. It was so attractive to me. And then I stayed because you showed me where I wasn't free, and I grew up, I was so in love with you. I have given up so many parts of myself that were important to me because all I knew from fucking bullshit Disney and Instagram and social media and whatnot, that if you love somebody you give up all that you want and need because you want to become the perfect partner. And that like um as we turned out, it doesn't really work that way.
it doesn't. It's I think, I mean, I obviously can very much echo in a sense a lot of what you said, just by, I think, coming into this relationship I was under the impression that I quote unquote had nothing wrong with me. And in a beautiful, like, I mean, in the most beautiful way, that I loads of things quote unquote wrong with me, but like you're naive to it and you're blind to it, and unless someone is able to uncover that and show you that mirror of the work that you need to do. And I think like that in itself being one of many things that was a huge part of our relationship has been a big thing for me to, learn so much more about myself. And I'm so grateful for that, even if it brought through like challenging times, because I feel like I'm a different person now.
Yeah, and I think we both bonded over like traditional way of relationship, which is very ego driven, where you fall in love and you idolize that person. You think they're your that person is your everything, and you fall in love with them. And then over time, after years of giving up parts of myself that I thought are the right things to become, I wanted to become the perfect girlfriend, make beautiful breakfast, and become everything you needed me to become. I realized that I feel I've created a prison for myself, right? And I felt like there were ways where I don't prioritize my own fun and my own growth because I put relationship first, and that's what I was taught is the right thing to do, and it really isn't, right? And so I think you were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You were this perfect partner to me, and then over years we have become somewhat resentful being in the relationship because we felt like we're doing what's best for a relationship, not what's best for us individually.
Yeah, I think something that I realized was how we spent a lot of our relationship kind of reminiscing on who we were. And I think it's obviously beautiful and it's nice, but I think it kind of allowed then kind of, I spent time thinking about us in 2017 to us when we got together even in 2020, which is then different in
Didn't say anything.
2020 than 2021, 2022, and it's like I don't think we spent much time seeing one another for who we were in the present moment, and spent a lot of time kind of thinking about who we were instead of who we are.
Yeah, and I think that's very common, right? Like we were super in love right at the beginning when we started. I remember like crying tears of joy. I was like, oh my God, he's the one. Like from the moment I saw you, I was like, wow, I knew that you're my soulmate, and that you're going to be someone very important in my life. Like it was just instant, slow-mo moment of like, wow, this is someone who,
120
yeah,
FPS, just like
yeah,
beautiful
yeah, like a
road
hair, and
footage.
I'd be like, I remember exactly that moment.
Yeah,
I think you did
sweat
too.
just slowly.
Yeah. And
It was
so
Thailand, so sweaty.
and so you know, when we got to a point in a relationship where we started having our first arguments or things that weren't really going smoothly, the first initial reaction is like, wait, what were the things that brought us joy together?
Yeah.
What was it? What connected us? And we kept coming back to those things that connected us years ago, which is beautiful and it kind of makes sense. But the way we operate and the pace at which we grow, that Aggie from 2017 or 2020 is no longer there.
Different.
And so things that would turn her on or things that would excite her or impress her are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So trying to recreate those same moments just ended up leaving us kind of frustrated.
Yeah, definitely leaving kind of like a gap and a hole which we were constantly trying to fill but didn't really know how. Yeah, I think it's very similar in how we just gave up part of ourselves thinking that was the right thing to do, but ultimately for a successful relationship you have to come as two wholes, right?
Yeah, which we only just started discovering that. And so January came, we have been working with a coach, and she was incredible. She didn't say to us, guys, it's time to break up. It's time to not breakup. She was like, what's your fullest expression? And both of us were like, not this relationship. We're in prison.
Yeah, I think we had got to a point where there was more conflict consistently versus moments. Like it was easy to count the number of moments that were really nice, which instead of them, do you know what I mean? It was kind of like,
I mean, I think to be fair, like I didn't feel like it was a lot of conflict. I think there was a deeper issue that wasn't being resolved.
but like conflict, even not with
Yeah,
arguments,
yeah,
not like
yeah.
big conflicts. There's like there
It
can be
was just
small
like
things,
warmth
disconnection,
and
like
wasn't enough caring.
yeah,
There wasn't enough like
no caring really.
yeah, there wasn't, and I think that was like the biggest thing that we're just like it wasn't a very we stopped being warm to each other, and I think I was frustrated because you are incredibly good at doing things that bring you joy and just doing that.
Yeah.
And I was just super resentful about that.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
ironic
like
because I felt the resentment, so then felt like I shouldn't do that, and that like, oh, I can't go do things that feel good
yeah,
to me, which is like for either of us is miserable.
yeah, because I was like, how come I'm the only the story I told myself, the story, this is not truth, but
Yeah.
you know, my interpretation is
It's a
like
great way to look at it, by the way.
yeah,
The thing that I've realized as well, it's always a story we tell ourselves,
yeah,
right? And you can explain yours in a second, but every single thing is like what I
it's
think
not
you
the
think about me,
reality.
or what
Yeah,
I think you're thinking and doing is a reflection of how I feel, and it's like, so I'm just thinking those things, but you know, it's not actually.
yeah, but the story I was telling myself, like, okay, he's having all that fun at the expense of me, and I'm the adult taking care of all the bills, all the responsibilities, all the you know all the finances, and you're the one having jetting around the world, having fun, going to Norway, going to Hong Kong, to whatever, Formula One, and living it up, and I'm like back at home dealing with the shit that like and making things happen. And so I was resentful, but what you were really showing me is that like I should just really focus on things that bring me joy instead of trying to always prioritize work and responsibilities. I had this idea that if I if the work gets done, I get to rest, but the work never gets done.
Especially working for yourself, right? It's like
it's
always going to pile up. There's always going to be something else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were very like eye-opening times for us.
Yeah, and you were like my best teacher, right? Because you were like right there in front of me, just wanting to have fun, and I was like, "Fuck!" Like here I am, like
I think
teaching people, and that was like the biggest thing in my course when I realized I'm like, "Fuck!" When it comes to the next level of my growth, I need to prioritize play, and your fun was so jarring to look at, and I was like, "Yeah, like this." Yeah, I had this impression that I can't have my joy and my fun because one of us has to be responsible and stay back at home. And so I'm going to do it because you're having fun. And obviously, we tried to heal that, but it was really, really hard.
Yeah, I think there's for that to ultimately be a thing, there's change from both sides. There's me stepping up to that. And
sorry, our puppy's dreaming about kitties. Are you okay?
Yeah, I think like there's work to be done for both of us there, in a sense of me stepping up and me really like stepping into that role, and then you also allowing and stepping back and allowing that role to kind of come into fruition, and for me to do that. And it's a very hard thing to do, and we're both in our ways of things. And I personally didn't like how I was showing up in the last year or so of our relationship. I didn't think it was the type of person that I am or want to be. And I found myself being more passive, more letting things happen without taking control, and those things I don't think.
Very interesting.
Those things I don't think really showed me in the best light to me, and I could feel that, and I think it just. I really didn't feel like I was showing up in a way that was ultimately a good way for our relationship or for myself.
Yeah, and I think the biggest illusion is that, another human being can make us feel a certain way. So I had this impression that because you were prioritizing your fun and going out and just like just yeah, you literally were prioritizing joy. You were prioritizing having fun and having pleasure. And I was the one that, you know, just like polished immigrant, like, you know, life's meant to, you know, you need discipline. Yeah.
Like life has to be hard.
Yeah, there has to be some level of suffering for you to feel like you're actually living. And so
the joy.
yeah, and people like you really were annoying me. I'm like, no, like, where's your fucking discipline, man? And so I was stepping into my masculine in a way, and obviously that's not attractive to a single guy on the planet, or maybe it is actually. But then but then what I realized, that it's like, it's not like you were making me into that, you know, forcing me into that energy, which was, I guess, the easy way out. I was like, cool, I'll just date someone who's more masculine so I don't have to worry about it. But then I realized it's not about that. It's about, you know, me letting things happen and just healing that healthy masculine
and using those moments of that mirror to see where, like you said, you're not free, and where you can do the work and I can do the work, and like embracing that instead of shutting it down.
Yeah. And I think the next reason I would say like that, I felt like well, obviously it's not a surprise that I wanted to start a family, and I did. Um, then we have to explain what happened in a second, but it was really important to me. I just didn't want to have a baby. I wanted to have a family. And that's a big difference. Like, I wanted to have your baby, and I wanted to, you know, I wanted to have a family with you. Like, that was like, I saw it so clearly. I was like super ready for it, and I felt like it just wasn't your priority at all. And that was really like painful, that you were like, oh, I can't imagine doing in the next 2 or 3 years, or whatever you said, in in Thailand on our trip. And I was like, wow, that's really like painful. Should I wait? Should I not wait? Like, I would love to be with somebody who really wants it. And so there was level of that as well, that I just was like, wasn't sure if what's yeah, like I wanted someone to be excited about these things and commitment and settling down and not being just like doing it for me. And I immediately think of our friend Ben and Astria, and their story of them wanting to have children and him not wanting to have children. He started asking himself, what does love want? I don't know if you remember. That is like just like, yeah, that it's just like not really what's best for you or best relationship, what's best for love in general, and prioritizing that. And I think, you know, like I said, like, I didn't want to have kids. I just wanted to have a family with you, and that was really hard to grieve that after the breakup, right? Because I was like, dang, like, I and in full respect, I think what was really, really annoying me, the people like, oh, if he loved you, he would do it for you. I'm like, no, that's not true love. Like, that's actually what we're trying to heal from, this idea that like you sacrifice
something that is really important to you, whatever it might be, because the other person wants it, and it can be many different things, right? That's not true
yeah
love.
And I'm so glad that you said like it's not an alignment for me, and I'm like, great. Like,
and I think for me, like, adding context around that, I think, like, you know, I think a lot of it for me, and I don't know if this is a similar thing for other guys or whether it's just me, but like, I think there have been points where I was like, family this, like, I don't care what timeline it's on, let's do it next week, let's do it in 2 years. Like, like, it didn't matter to me, but the points, we continued getting to a point where we were more and more disconnected. So the idea of having a family sounded less and less exciting.
Yeah, it just sounded like a chore that you need
like,
to tick off.
Miserable. Why would I want to have a family when we're miserable? That doesn't, to me, doesn't sound like the place I want to have a family from. And I think like that, without us seeing this improvement over time of us building, us getting to January and realizing, like, you know, where we were at, I think that was still very much a part. So those conversations were coming from a place of, well, we don't feel good. So
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it was a catch-22 because I didn't feel good in a relationship because I didn't feel honored. I didn't feel like my timeline was honored, like my needs were honored. And so I was frustrated because I was like, yo, like, you're not really seeing me.
yeah.
But in reality, I wasn't really seeing myself. And so in January, we're like, yeah, it didn't feel like a full alignment. I think it was a joint decision. Um, so you ended up, you know, I lived in an Airbnb. You decided to move out. I was in the process of buying my house.
Well, no, we were in an Airbnb. That's where we were at the
Oh,
time.
yes.
And basically, I left that Airbnb.
We're looking for rentals. And I was like, I don't think we should look for rentals. I think we should break up and I'll buy something. And so you went traveling for a few weeks. I put an offer down for a house by myself, which was super weird because I was like, I always had this dream I would buy my first home together. By the way, we're currently in our home in Bali that we bought together, which is
Technically, this one came first.
yeah. So this one came first. We bought it 50-50. We got this place in June 2022. And so it was supposed to be ready in September, October, November. And it's a long story short, but we're currently, yeah.
May, June.
We're now in June, a whole year later, and we're just finally sitting here in our house. Yeah, so this is all, everything's brand new. And so it was kind of sad knowing that we're breaking up and the house isn't ready. And we're like, fuck it, we'll just rent it. We'll just go back.
Continue doing it.
Yeah, we already have it. It was sad for sure. And then me trying to find my home in LA, and you know, I found the place, I signed the lease. I mean, signed, you know, put an offer down, I bought a place, and so that was. I have gone through such a dark night of the soul. I was crying so much because I avoided grief, and all my relationships in reality have been I would go from one relationship to another very, very quickly, or after a breakup, I would distract myself with traveling, of course, right? So it was so easy. Another trip, you don't even pay attention. And this one, for me to stay in LA after a breakup and not travel for 3 months was, yeah, you know, incredibly powerful. I did ayahuasca, and I'm like, ayahuasca, please help me heal from Jacob. And she showed me every single time I chose not to grieve because it was uncomfortable, because timing wasn't right, because I was in a public place, because I didn't feel like I was supported, because I felt like it's weak of me to grieve. And so that night, I mean, that weekend, because it's basically 2 nights of 12 hours of purging and Aya, and just remembering every single moment, grieving after my first grandma and my grandpa, and I mean, all four of my grandparents, was so exhausting. And I was like, okay, Aya, but what about Jacob? Like, I came here to get over him. And she's like, yeah, that relationship had to die. You, Jaggy, or whatever you think that is dead. It's just no longer resonates with who you are. Whether it's the end of your relationship with Jacob, that's a different story. And I was like, what?
Thanks for the twisted answers.
Yeah, so in reality, I think I felt this Aya ceremony very confused because I was expecting Aya to tell me, you know, get over him, that wasn't worth it. And she's like, no, 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 this is your, you know, this is your soulmate that is teaching you something.
And I think what you bring up then is something that when I decided to, yeah, obviously to move out, to go in an Airbnb, to a friend's place, Airbnb, like a few different spots around Venice, and I spent a lot of time by myself, which I haven't really done. I think a lot of the things, trips I've done, everything have been with people always, and it's way easier, right? It's way easier to spend time with others in points where it feels hard, and I think I found a lot of like solitude and peace by spending time with myself, whether that was like, you know, long drives, spending the day out, like small little things wherever I could to really just like sit in the discomfort of the pain that was us breaking up. And definitely the thing that rang the most clear to me that was whatever was going to happen for us in the future, whether it was us becoming friends, us in another relationship, us with whatever that kind of came out to, it kind of really had to be a kind of death of what was in order for anything else to be born, whatever, because it just couldn't ever come from the place that it had been coming
from. Yeah. And so that was it. And you came back from traveling and you're like, maybe you should give it another go. And I was like, no, I've done so much work to get over you. Like, I was actually getting slowly and but surely more comfortable in LA. And just for me, it was really healing because to buy a place in LA. For those who don't know, I am Polish, moved to the US 9 years ago. So starting to build your credit history as an immigrant in the US is really, really hard. And so for me to be able to get a place, my dream place in West Hollywood, it just was like, felt like impossible. And I never thought I would do it without anyone's help or by myself or without a partner. So I needed to actually show it to myself. And I think this brings up an interesting point of codependency and how promoted it is in social media, of how, probably even by us in the past, where it's just doing everything together, relying on that person's for happiness, saying shit like, oh, you complete me, you make me happy. Yeah, you're my everything. I don't know what I would do without you. And I'm like, I do know what I would do without you. And actually, we broke up, and yeah, we were super sad, but I never really felt like I wanted to question my life anymore. I was like, yeah, it's sad, but it's like, you're my biggest teacher, and what we had between us was super real. Yeah. And for me, again, a measure of a good relationship is how much you've grown and how much you've healed, not how long you've been together. Yeah. And so you were my biggest love, right? Like the biggest mirror. Yeah. And yeah, like even
in that sense, yeah, the most growth, the most like,
yeah. So it doesn't fucking matter if you were like, like we always like, how long have you been together for? Like, can we switch that question to how much have you healed together, right? Yeah.
So true.
That's way more important, right? And I think we just like create these prisons for each other of like, whenever I hear couples say like, oh, I don't want my boyfriend to do this and that and whatever, it's just like, it's just such a list of things of, I want you to be this for me and I need to be that for you in order to be loved. It's a very conditional love. And we realize we don't want to live in this conditional, ego-driven love. We want to be love where it's like, what's your fucking fullest expression? Yeah. And so I was very happy to have healed, like, sit in that sadness that came up because of our breakup. And again, you don't feel sad because of the breakup, but because there's that emptiness, a person is no longer there, you see that there was so much sadness within you that you didn't attend to, or like pay attention to. And I took my mom to Maldives, and I was like, my mom was like, do you still sleep with Jacob? And I was, yeah, are you getting together? Because obviously we had so much love and reverence for each other. After the breakup, people felt like, oh, they need to get back together. Like, what's wrong? And I just, honestly, and I have to say it again in case I didn't, breaking up with you made me fall in love with you. Because, they say you don't know somebody until you break up with them. And we've all been there, I think, where we felt like, oh, someone's like such a good match, and then you start the breakup process and you just like, like, oh my God, like monster. And you have proven to be such a good human and with so much integrity, so much love, so much vulnerability that I was like, fuck, I love this guy even more. I want him to be happy. I can't wait to see him thrive. I want to see him in his fullest expression. I want to see him enjoying his freedom because he deserves it. And I was so impressed by our breakup and how you navigated it.
Yeah, I think it's testament to both of us, really, how such a difficult thing can be handled with so much grace for one another. And I think those few months that have now got us to here have been a powerful time for both of us.
It's been 5 months
since really connecting with things that feel important and true to us,
Yeah.
that we, out of no fault of the other person, you know, stopped ourselves doing or connecting with, or whatever that might be, passions and things like that. But I think we have both settled more comfortably into like feeling ourselves again.
Yeah.
And I think that can only come from sometimes, 5 months of challenge.
Yeah. And so we met up here in Bali. Long story
Saw
short,
from
we
our little entry to the villa video. We
yeah.
literally have a video of the first time we saw each other 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it was definitely some chemistry there. I thought I was
I
over this
what you're
breakup.
talking about.
I was confident. I was like, I'm so over him. This
That's
is gonna
bullshit.
be really easy.
That's
La la
such
la.
bullshit.
No,
That's
I was
the story you were telling yourself.
Yeah.
Which is so wrong.
No, I had the story I was telling myself. I'm like super over it, and then I saw you. I'm like, oh hi, I'm so over you. Like so cute. Delusional. Anyways, and so we saw each other. We have a lawsuit here. We had keys to picked up. We also had to start a company here together and sign all the documents so we can rent the villa, because we decided, okay, we don't live here. We both need to now come start a company together and rent it out.
Rent it out legitimately. We need to do that with a company here.
Yeah, so we're like, okay, we'll just come. We have to do it together. It's gonna be fine. We'll take separate rooms.
We'll hang out. Sleep in separate rooms and just kind of celebrate the fact that regardless of the position that we're in, we have a beautiful space that we've ultimately built together, and why do that from a place of resentment?
Yeah,
celebrate it.
Yeah, and we're like, cool. We're super woke. No, we're like woke enough to handle this. And so on day 3, we are driving. Actually, I went out without you because we were like doing our own thing. So I went out without you, and then you were just working, and I was like, come join, I'm with friends, you would really like it. And I was trying to like, remember how you didn't want to go out?
Yeah.
And I was like, come, don't, whatever. And so you decided to pick me up. And as we're driving back home together on one bike, we realized I left my bike. Anyways, long story short,
we're driving across a shortcut near us in Pereira now. There's a guy parked in the middle of the road in a very weird place that you don't stop, where it's like midnight. We're like coming past, glance back, and there's just an abundance, the only way to describe it, an abundance of puppies
on the street.
Running around. And this guy had literally stopped a few minutes before and had seen someone dropping off, literally throwing these puppies into
out of a bag
right next to a river, and then scootering off into the night. And this guy had stopped, obviously couldn't leave them. We were the next people to stop, and between us, managed to rescue 7 puppies.
And the funny thing is, like, obviously, I mean, not so funny, but puppies were, in the drain, like by the river. They were like thrown out there to die. Like it was right by the river, right? And we have tried to stop other bikes to take the remaining puppies. No one wanted to take them. And we're like, what are we going to do with 4 dogs? And I'm like, we have a construction zone. There's 30 people at the villa. It was really just like super, super crazy. So I'm like, we'll just take them for one night and we'll drop them off at the shelter the next day. We just can't leave them on the side of the road, but it's too dangerous for them.
2 puppies in my arms, 2 puppies in her arms, scootering back to the villa. We get them back. They are like, because of how scared they were, I think it felt like they were like 2 weeks old. Because it felt like they had kind of constricted all of their senses and their like everything.
Or maybe they were underfed as well.
Like everything, but they were small. They were scared. They were really, really kind of like young feeling puppies. And we calmed them down, gave them some food, gave them some water and some milk and whatever we felt was the right thing to do. And the next morning, thinking, oh well, we'll drop them off at the vet
and then we're like, oh, actually, maybe we'll just make sure that they're like healthy. So we took them to the vet. They ended up being like 6 weeks old. The vet said they're too sick to be vaccinated. So
here's a bunch of medication,
like 3 different antibiotics. So I'm like, okay,
twice a day for all of them for 4 puppies.
And so like, okay, we'll just heal them and then we'll put them up for adoption.
It's fine, a couple of weeks, easy work.
Yeah, and so now we're 4 weeks later and we keep pushing our flight.
Later, there's been shit in every part of this house. Inside and
we're not really selling the Jaggy Villa, are we?
Weeds everywhere. It's been disinfected, don't worry.
It's been blessed by puppy wee.
Blessed by puppies. Right?
And it was so ironic because it obviously family starting a family was a big part of why we broke up, and here we were like
being blessed with a family of 6 of us.
yeah. And the funny thing is I had a puppy before, I never had 4. And
Also, let's remember, like, you pick up a puppy usually when they're 12 weeks old.
yeah,
And we've got them
at
at
6.
6 when they still think they should be with their mum. So they're in a very, very vulnerable place, and a place that you typically, most people will never see puppies or get to look
Without
after
a mom,
puppies
right?
Without a mum as well.
So what was really interesting, they would wake up every morning, run to me, lie down along my belly and try to bite my belly. So they somehow sense that I'm the female in this pack. And so they would always like definitely had like the
fancy my nipples.
no. But they immediately knew that you know that must be their mommy. But it was really sad, like whenever someone who works on site who's a local would try to pick them up, they would start crying. So clearly there's a trauma of someone picking them up from their mom. And so yeah, like we just couldn't imagine like it was super funny because yeah, I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen when you arrive to the same place with your ex? Like honestly, we can be adult about it.
What's all the best thing that can happen, depending how you look at it.
Ta-da!
We have puppies.
It was really nice to see you in that role because obviously, we have a dog back in LA, but it's very different. He's a dog. Like these are babies. Like yeah, and
puppies.
So they cry in the morning when they wake up at 6:32. Like we have to go and they cry in the middle of the night. We can't sleep. We're just like, hey, who's gonna go and snuggle the puppy so they come down? We have to feed them a lot. We have to clean their shed. Like it's been
babies.
Yeah, they're like literally little babies, and now they have grown into big puppies.
Annoying little puppy.
And so now they're at the level. I'm like, oh, cool. Like they're ready to find a forever home. One of them is already with his new dad. 2 of them are staying with our newly hired villa manager, and one is potentially staying with us for now with a friend.
In the next few months until we're back, which is a really beautiful thing. I think, yeah, it was such an interesting way that neither of us expected to reconnect while we've been here, and opened up a lot of like challenging conversations and times for us to really sit down and share and be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think I made it a point of honor not to get back together because I'm like, oh, this is too fucking cliche for us to get back together like that. And they didn't want it to be automatic pilot. So the beginning a lot of it was automatic pilot. And we had this conversation at the beach 2 weeks ago. We're like, hey, we should not get back together. And you're like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's not good for us. We should just
do what we decided to do.
Yeah. Ago. And there was a bit of a plot twist recently. And I think for me, the most attractive thing to anybody is their commitment to healing and their vulnerability. And I wasn't sure if I can see that in you because, I'm the spiritual one and you're not, but in reality, you are very spiritual. And so
I'm not satisfied.
The best HRV without doing anything ridiculous. Anyways, and so you shared with me parts of you that I didn't know before that were vulnerable and brave and badass that I had no idea about. That just made me respect even more. And I was like, oh wow, he is committed to his healing. And that was really, really the biggest thing that would be like a deal breaker for me. And then we still didn't agree about the family.
We didn't. And I think it's one of those really interesting things, like I said before, that ultimately how we are is a reflection of, how excited I am for something to happen. And I don't know where that comes from, but I think it's just, feeling how we were with this and us getting really honest and clear with one another really did give me a beautiful wake-up call, in the sense that, for one, I don't want another man baby inside of you. Basically plain and simple. And two, it's really the time that we've spent apart, I think, has been such a powerful time for us to really step into the feeling of who we are individually. And I think it brought around for me definitely a sense of how can we find a way to move forward together.
Yeah, and I think it's just like the hardest thing in the world is to look at someone who you love or anybody for who they are right now, not who they were 5 minutes ago, 4 months ago, and whatnot. And so it's really hard not to bring that baggage of the past into the relationship and say, if you tell me I really want to make it work, I'm like, well, you didn't make it work 4 times last month, so what makes you think that this time is going to be different? And yet ultimately you never really live in a, in the present moment, because you constantly, you know don't give yourself a chance to break the habit of being yourself, and don't give the other person a chance to do that. And I think we had some new non-negotiables for what would the Jaggy 2.0 mean, um, and how different this relation has to be. It's not what we used to have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know if that was clear enough, but basically, yeah, we decided to get back together, right?
I think it was pretty clear. We can make it even more clear.
Mm. um, but I think what's really interesting to me, and something like you said, we have been very clear with one another of what's important to us, and what ultimately like are these non-negotiables and things that we're both coming into a relationship feeling like, hey, I need to be honored by this and you need to be honored by this, and vice versa. And knowing how I think we learned so much from both the end through our relationship, but towards the end and throughout the time that we've been apart. They're going crazy right now. That it can really offer a beautiful lens for us to see where we can go now.
Yeah. What did you miss most about me?
What did I miss most about you? Seeing you with these pups just made me realize how much I've missed your warmth and your, just as ridiculous as it is, your maternal instincts to just look after them. It's so beautiful to see, and maybe frustrating about how much they liked you and still like you over me. But that, and the way you approach work and life, like it's been amazing to see your kind of like disconnection from that on the weekends, and really like finding your presence in not thinking you need to do things. And I'd miss that in you, like you just choosing joy, and choosing a good time, like us going and ripping motorbikes on the beach in 2 hours time.
Looking at the lights, we might have to.
Yeah.
How do you think we're gonna be different this time?
Put me on the spot now. I guess it is your podcast. How do I think we're going to be different this time? I think that it's really a case of having all cards on the table at all times, and really being open to feedback, and really understanding that I'm with you because you really show me how brilliant I can be, and allowing for that to be shown to me instead of shutting it down sometimes, and things like that. I think for me are really important, to just be super open and honest and transparent with
where we're at. I think what's really hard for me also was that how hard you are on yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like I judge you less than you judge yourself. And so as you committed to your growth and your healing, you started loving yourself more. And I really appreciate that, because it's really hard to be in a relationship with somebody who's tough on them, or like, oh, I'm just a perfectionist, I'm really hard on myself. I'm like, yeah, you don't love yourself, you can't love me, so like I can't be in a relationship like that. But now I see you actually start to love yourself, and that's such a great indication of your capacity for love. Amen. Anyways, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. You guys want to learn anything more about biohacking? Don't watch this podcast.
Well, but it is like love is the biggest biohack,
is,
and
yeah.
forgiveness.
I told you I'm a savage at it, and here we are jumping into a new relationship together because I'm so good at it.
No, it's true. It really is like forgiveness and letting go, right? It is the biggest biohack, and so is having 3 puppies constantly at your feet. So that means, what does it mean? Oxytocin. And oxytocin heals everything. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to find out what happens next, watch another episode.
Bye.
Bye. Did mommy and daddy get back together? What's gonna happen? Watch next episode.
The fact you said mommy and daddy is a clear indicator.